Okay, happy May the 4th, everybody. May the 4th be with you. And you, Barry. And you, other Barry. And you, third Barry. And you, fourth Barry. 4 berries for the 4th of May, all of which apparently have the Sharingan now. So, this is turning out splendid, is it not? Alright, so it's been about 4 months now, so I think I'm about ready to talk about Obito Uchiha. Okay, so you know what? I had to go back and I had to reread a lot of Naruto chapters. I had to do a lot of research because when we hit Obito for this series, I just immediately did not want to talk about him. I just remembered not liking his character by the end of the story, and that's sort of just like I lost all interest in doing the Akatsuki series at that point. It's just like, I gotta take a break. So I took a break, and then after a few months, I'm like, okay, I want to continue this, and I don't want to just skip over Obito and move on to like Orochimaru or Itachi, and I said Itachi would be the last one, so we got to get to that point eventually, and I'm like, okay. Back up a bit, Matt, and think about why you don't like Obito. Like, why do you have this, like, negative, like, you know, look at Obito in your mind? And I'm like, okay. Now, keep in mind also, aside from doing some research and rereading some chapters for the other Akatsuki members in this series, I have not reread the last arc of Naruto since the first time I read it, back when it was serialized in Shonen Jump, back in, like, the early 2010s or whatever. The early 2010s. Yeah, that's a term. That's a term now, it is. And so, my memory's a little hazy with a lot of this stuff. So, I went back and I'm thinking, alright, I'm pretty sure the reason I did not care for Obito by the end of this is because for so long we assumed Obito, or Tobi, or the Masked Man, whatever you want to call him before he was revealed to be Obito Uchiha, he was the final antagonist of this entire story. That was like the prevailing theory in a lot of circles in that point, because, it's like, okay, Pain is the leader of the Akatsuki, but then boom, Tobi shows out of nowhere, and he's not this comedic character that we originally thought he was in his first introduction and, his interactions with Deidara and everybody. No, this guy shows up and he's talking to Pain and Conan like he's their boss, and he's got a Sharingan, and he's calling himself Madara Uchiha, and we're like, whoa, okay, this is a flip, this is a twist I didn't see coming. And I remember that twist. I remember reading the manga and finding out that, this masked man is actually pretty serious, and I'm like, okay, where's this going? And that happened in chapter 364 of Naruto. That was the chapter that Obito, or Madara, revealed himself, okay, to Pain and everybody. Like, we found out about it, okay? And so it just continues, like, further and further throughout the story. Like, he's got this really crazy power to, like, blend in and out of dimensions and become intangible, and he's like this really powerful character, and he's got the Sharingan, and we did just assume he was Madara Uchiha. We don't know how it would have worked, but we didn't know a lot about Madara Uchiha at that point, right? So it made sense, so we just kind of kept going along with it. Eventually, during the war, we find out Madara Uchiha was resurrected with the impure resurrection jutsu, so it's like, okay, if Madara isn't this dude, then who is he? Who's the man behind the mask? And I think there was just so much buildup, so much hype for this guy out of hundreds and hundreds of chapters. There was no question that whoever this person did turn out to be, they were going to be the final enemy of this story that Naruto would have to face off against, because that just seemed where it was building, right? And we find out in chapter 599, Naruto finally shatters the mask, and we get that whole chapter where we have, like, the whole thing in a POV from Obito's perspective, okay? And then at the very end of the chapter, the mask is destroyed, and then Kakashi and Guy are there, and they're like, it's not true, it's not possible, Kakashi! I know, it's who it is, it's Obito, right? And a lot of people at that point, were, banking on it being Obito. I honestly did not want it to be Obito, because one thing that people always brought up was Tobi is sort of an anagram for Obito. If you just, double the O's, then therefore it's Obito, Tobi, and I'm thinking, that's too obvious. There's no way Kishi would do that. Okay, that's how it went. But that alone was not the reason why I didn't like his character. I'm like, okay, I thought the Obito angle was a little bit too obvious, but okay, fine, he's Obito. Here's, I think, the reason where I had a problem with it. So he's revealed at chapter 600. That's when Obito's revealed to be the mask guy, okay. Naruto, the manga, ends at chapter 700, okay? So we have 100 chapters, which is a decent amount of time. That's over like a year and a half or so of serialization. That's a while. So, and there's breaks as well, so I don't know exactly the time frame here, but that's 100 chapters. In the time span of that 100 chapters, it's revealed that not only was Obito, or the Masked Man, not the main antagonist of this story. He was being manipulated by Madara, who also is not the final antagonist of this story. He's revealed to be manipulated by Black Zetsu, who's also not revealed to be the final antagonist of this story, who's then instead to be manipulated by Kaguya, who's the true final villain of Naruto, that shows up in, like, the last few, you know, like last few dozen chapters of the manga. So I'm like, alright, so we spent hundreds of chapters with this guy, and it's like, he was a guy being manipulated by another guy, being manipulated by a weird embodiment soul thing, being manipulated by an alien rabbit goddess that actually is the villain. I think at that point I was just so pissed at that I did not care, or I overlooked all of the revelations that we got involving Obito's character, because there's a lot of it. I guess you could just boil it down to Naruto does the talk no jutsu again, and he manages to get Obito onto their side. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and I'll go into that, of course. But I think at that point, I was just kind of so pissed. That's like, wow, that I don't like that. I think that's kind of contrived, and I would have rather him just be evil, you know? Like, I would have rather have just been Obito from the beginning. He's the one that orchestrated everything. Madara didn't get involved. You know, Black Zetsu, Kaguya wasn't involved. It was just Obito the whole time, and then Naruto, boom, beats him down, and then end of story. I guess so. That's what kind of left a sour taste in my mouth at that point. But I'm like, all right, now that we've come to that revelation, let's read up on Obito's character. Let's go back kind of from the beginning, and let's read through all of the moments in the manga and in the story and his personality and everything like that, and let's see if we can arrive at a different conclusion here. Okay. So, Obito, the story begins, of course. He was a young lad. He was on the same team with Rin and Kakashi, and their mentor, their sensei, was Minato, who, of course, was the fourth Hokage, Naruto's father. And so, back in the day, it was very much Obito and Kakashi, and similar to Sasuke and Naruto's relationship. And that's intentional. Like, Kishi did that for a reason, and that's the whole thing later on when you do get to the talk no jutsu part between Obito and Naruto. So, Obito is an Uchiha, very happy-go-lucky, very energetic kid, even looks like Naruto a lot with the hairstyle and everything, who dreams of one day being acknowledged by the village and becoming the Hokage. And then you have Kakashi, who is like the Sasuke of the group, very stoic. He's the cool kid, even though Obito is an Uchiha and he has the Sharingan and everything, which I don't know if at that point he awakened the Sharingan. I don't believe he did. But even though he was part of the Uchiha clan, Kakashi was stronger than him and he had more skill than him and everything like that. And then you had Rin in the middle, where, you know, Rin was the object of Obito's affections. You know, Obito had a crush on Rin, but Rin had, you know, her affections on Kakashi. So it's extraordinarily similar to Team 7, and that was intentional, okay? And so one day, while they were fighting in the Third Great Ninja War, Obito gets attacked by a bunch of rock ninja, a giant landslide occurs, Kakashi's eye gets sliced in the process, that's where this scar comes from. Obito gets half of his body crushed under a massive boulder, and in order for him to get out, in order for Rin to be saved, and for Kakashi to live, Obito offers his one Sharingan, the one that hasn't been crushed by a 3-ton boulder. You know, take this, use the medical kit that Rin gave us, transplant the eye. I love how in Naruto that's a thing. I just love how in Naruto that eyeballs are just like, you know, plug and play. You know what I mean? It's just, it happens so much in the last arc where like Madara's jumping around the battlefield just ripping out eyes and just, okay, yeah, we're good. You know, I love that. It's just, that's how it works. Imagine if that's how it was in real life. Like, if you just get tired of your eye color or whatever, if you want a really cool design, you know, you go to a store and you just be like, you know what, I want red eyeballs. Yeah, just pop. Ah, that hurt. Okay, yeah, that's good. All right, awesome. It's like Thor in Infinity War. It's just, yeah, you're good. So anyway, you know, Kakashi gets Obito's Sharingan, and using that power, he's able to properly use the Chidori, and, you know, break free and save Rin, and then Obito apparently dies. And you can read all about this in the last volume of Part 1 of Naruto, Volume 27, which features the Kakashi Gaiden, or the side story, and there you go. So we find this out, it's a good bridge. It's honestly, looking back on it, a great bridge between Part 1 and 2 to include that little side story, and unbeknownst to the fandom, at the time, Kishimoto was like, yeah, we're going to go into part 2 of Naruto where the Akatsuki are going to become the main villains, and the person that was the head of the Akatsuki is Obito. So it's, I guess, fitting that we learn about him and Kakashi and Rin's and Minato's backstory in between the 2 parts of Naruto. So Obito is mentioned throughout. He's even mentioned like as early... I don't think he's mentioned by name, but he's mentioned by Kakashi during the survival training at the beginning of the manga, you know, when Kakashi mentions the monument stone in the village, and he's like, you know, some of my best friends' names are carved on this memorial stone, and I think his name isn't dropped first. I think it's actually dropped by Kurenai, when after Sarutobi dies, Kakashi is late to the funeral to go to the memorial stone first, and Kurenai is there and says, are you paying respects to Obito again? And Kakashi is just like, oh yes, I'm sorry, I'll be at the funeral later, okay? So it's mentioned throughout, and even into part 2, it's mentioned a couple of times. Tobi shows up at the end of the fight with Sasori after he dies. Tobi replaces him as a member of the Akatsuki, and like I said, very comedic. He's called Tobi at this point, has a very goofy voice. That's another thing too. I love the fact, although it's interesting, but at the same time, it is a little bit disconcerting that his voice changes so much. He has a voice when he's a kid, and then he has a voice when he's Tobi, and then after he reveals himself as Madara Uchiha, he goes from like, hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Tobi, all wacky. I am Madara Uchiha. I am the one that shall guide the world into the new era. You know, and then when his mask shatters, it's also revealed that he goes back to like his regular voice, just aged up as he's an adult now. You know, same age as Kakashi, like 26, 27 or something like that. So yeah, I just find it a little weird that the voice changes so much. But then again, this is Naruto, where you have magical jutsus that can clone yourself and, you know, summon meteors from space. So why can't their voice change? I mean, it was installed in the mask. The mask had a little voice modulator, you know, little ceiling tag in there, and that's why the voice changed. There you go. Fine. Explain. So anyway, yeah, and like I said, when that first reveal happened, when he was in the village hidden in the rain, and oh my god, the backdrop of that in the anime is so cool. You got the creepy choir Akatsuki music playing in the background, and the rain and the lightning and the thunder, and then you just have Pain and Conan. Up to this point, we thought Pain was the head honcho. His name was Pain, for God's sake. We thought he was the leader of the Akatsuki. And then this hooded figure is talking about, like, this was right after the fight with Deidara, right after Sasuke, right after Sasuke defeats Deidara and everything. We assume Tobi died in the explosion as well, and then he shows up and just reveals himself. The lightning crashes. He's like, I am Madara Uchiha. Ooh, this is getting good. All right, this is getting good, all right? And, you know, he messes around with, you know, the main cast a lot because he literally has the ability to teleport. There was the time they were heading to the Land of Iron, and Naruto and Yamato and Kakashi were staying at that hotel place, and then, you know, Naruto's just sitting on the ground just thinking about Sasuke and what is he going to do and how's he going to bring him back and everything, or what does he have to do. And then all of a sudden, Obito just shows up on the windowsill like, Naruto Uzumaki, we need to have a chat. You know, you're the main character, and you somehow managed to convince Nagato to just give up a decades-long plan to use the Rinne Revival Jutsu in a matter of like 5 minutes. So I'm a little curious, what did you say to him? I can imagine freaking Obito's confusion. I can imagine his interest, right? Think about this, right? Obito kind of set up the whole, you know, Akatsuki plan through years and years of manipulation and genjutsus and this masterful plan that was passed on to him from the real Madara Uchiha. Years and years and years of planning. Taking Madara's Rinnegan, planting it in Nagato, manipulating Nagato throughout the years to get to the point where he needed him to be. Years of planning and manipulation, and it all gets unraveled within 5 minutes. We talked about this in Nagato's video where Naruto speaks to Nagato and he decides, well, you know what, Naruto? I was planning to use this revival jutsu for this other purpose that we were planning for years and whatever, but you know what? You know what? You're cool, Naruto. You're pretty cool. Jiraiya picked you as his student for a reason. I'll use it to bring back all your friends that I just killed. I'm sorry. And he does. And so Obito's a little... Why? What did you say? What did you offer him? How did that even work? So, fair enough, right? At that point, it's also when Obito explains the whole backstory with Itachi and the Sage and Indra and Ashura. That's when Naruto finds out about the whole history that he explains it to Sasuke. Yeah, so, trying to think of the best way for really me to set this up here. I guess from this point, we'll just go into what happened with Obito after the Third Shinobi War, because that's when, after Naruto shatters the mask, we find out about it at that point anyway, and we learn about, okay, how did he go from, you know, kind of like Naruto-esque, happy-go-lucky, excited, you know, I'm gonna be Hokage, Databayo. How did he go from this to, you know, evil? Okay, so a theme that runs in Naruto a lot, and it happens quite often, is that a lot of Uchihas want to burn the entire world down awash in hatred. That comes up quite a bit. That happens to Sasuke, it happens to Madara, it happens to Obito, and this is not repetitive storytelling. This is not like Kishi just being a bad writer. No, Kishi specifically, this is a theme. He wants to give an idea. There is this curse that exists in the Uchiha clan. And it's kind of like a curse and a blessing. It's a blessing because it provides the Sharingan, and, you know, further on to that, the Mangyako Sharingan, where when an Uchiha experiences severe emotional distress, such as the death of one of their close friends or their family, it triggers something in the brain which kind of creates, you know, the Mangyako Sharingan effect, but also has this insane, like, dialed up to 11 level of hatred and rage and despair, where it makes you really just, you know, want to, like, and the way that it's explained by Tobirama, the second Hokage, is like they are a clan that experiences love and compassion more than any other clan in the entire world. And because love and compassion and, like, hatred are like two sides of the same coin that can flip at a moment's notice, that's why they're so dangerous, in a sense, okay? And so this happened with Madara, it happened with Sasuke, happened with Obito. Didn't really happen with Itachi so much. I mean, Itachi did join the Akatsuki and everything, but I don't think Itachi ever really had, like, the burn the world down kind of mentality that the other ones did, right? So just keep that in mind. That is a prevailing thing that Kishimoto brings up, okay? So after the battle, coincidentally, I guess that the hole that they got crushed under, that the giant boulder that, you know, crushed Obito and, like, wiped out half of his body, happened to be pretty close to wherever Madara Uchiha was holed up, so that's cool. Also, they had the whole tree thing, so maybe it's like the tree network was there and it connected to wherever Madara's hideout was. Maybe he had, like, you know, root network all over the world, essentially all over the nations, and then, you know, the Zetsus brought, you know, Obito over to him. Using Hashirama's cells, Madara kind of pasted Obito back together, kind of like his entire right side of his body. Madara at this point is like, I don't know, 130, and he's hooked up to the Geto statue, so he can't really move from this area. And this is where we find out exactly what happened to Madara later in life, you know, how he awakened the Rinnegan in his old age, and he implanted part of Hashirama's corpse inside of him. We learn all about that. And Obito isn't immediately swayed by Madara. He's thankful to Madara for healing him and everything like that, and there's even some comedic moments with them. But Obito is still very much keen on, like, just healing, getting better, and then returning to the village so he can say, hey, Kakashi, Rin, Minato, I'm still alive! Crazy, huh? I ran into this crazy old guy with the Rinnegan and he healed me. That's great. By the way, I got first cells now. That's awesome. Yeah, so he's still very much about that. However, one night, that all changes when there is an issue with the village hidden in the mist. I believe the whole thing with that is that Rin was the Jinchuriki for the Three Tails, and it basically came down to Kakashi having to kill her. And so you had a moment where the Zetsus showed up and they were like, hey, Obito, Kakashi and Rin are in trouble, you gotta get going. And so he suits up with the armor and he heads out and he slaughters a bunch of the Mist Ninja along the way, and he arrives on the battlefield at the exact same time. Perfect timing! I mean, perfect timing for Madara, because I feel like he probably set this up. You know, the whole thing about Naruto, you have to understand, is pretty much nothing happens by accident. Whenever some horrible tragedy occurs, it's usually being manipulated by at least 3 or 4 other people in the shadows, who are then being manipulated by more people even further into the shadows. That usually tends to be what happens. So if I'm remembering this correctly, the whole idea that Rin and Kakashi were there at that exact point, at that exact time, and then Obito showed up at the exact instant to see what happened, yeah, that's probably all manipulated by Madara long before that. Anyway, Kakashi has to kill Rin. He doesn't want to do it, but Rin, you know, you have to do this, you know, for the sake of the village and the, you know, the Jinchuriki and everything like that. So he kills Rin. And then Obito witnesses this. This is a moment where Kakashi, they both awaken the Mangekyo at the same time, because somebody that they both cared about died right before them, Rin. And so Kakashi awakens the Mangekyo there, but then he immediately passes out because his body can't handle it. Meanwhile, Obito witnesses this and then goes on a blood rage and just massacres every single member of the Mist Village that's around there. And it's at that point that Obito, awash in the hatred that all too many Uchiha have felt in the past before him, feel this crushing despair that nothing could ever improve. Rin is now dead, right at his feet, and he picks her up and he kind of cradles her corpse and he's like, I'm sorry. And so this is the moment, this is the defining moment in Obito's life, where a switch just gets flipped in his head, where he decides to make a new ninja world. Later on, when Obito fights against Kakashi, he mentions, I don't have any ill feelings toward you, Kakashi. It's not like I hate you because you killed Rin. I know you did not want to kill her. No, duh. You obviously didn't do it because you wanted to. It's because you had to do it and because she told you to, right? The reason I'm doing everything that I'm doing is because it's the world, Kakashi. It's the world that we're in. We're in this ninja world that teach children how to use magic powers and to blow fireballs and everything and send them off into world wars. You know, the world that we have created has led to the moment where you were forced to kill someone that you cared about. And like I said, we were all kids when this was going on. So Obito's perspective is that. He's like, I'm not mad at you, Kakashi. I really don't feel any strong feelings for you one way or the other. It's just the world. And so with this Eye of the Moon, with this infinite Tsukuyomi plan, I'm going to create a dream world for everybody, wipe the slate clean, and then we can all live in our perfect paradises together, and we'll all be together. You know, I'll be together with you, and Rin will be there, and Sensei will be there, and everything will just be, we don't have to worry about this world anymore. Now, of course, pretty sure Obito did not know about the truth of the infinite Tsukuyomi, which, of course, I don't even think Madara knew about the truth of the infinite Tsukuyomi, which creates the giant tree, and then, you know, absorbs everybody in the world, and then, yeah, does send them into the dreamscape, but also, you know, warps their bodies and turns them into an army of white Zetsu clones. Probably Obito did not know about that factoid. He just thought it was like, oh, this is the out. This is the way I can effectively run away from it all and change everything at the same time. And so I guess after that whole event where Rin died, he just gave himself over mind, body, and soul to Madara. So he returns to Madara in the cave, and Madara is just like, all right, you've seen what happened. You see the evil of this ninja world. I have a plan. Oh, I have a plan, young Uchiha. Oh, I'm not as young as I used to be. I have a plan. It's called the Eye of the Moon, where we project a massive Sharingan on the moon itself and hypnotize the entire world. And at that moment, Obito was like, you don't even have to finish explaining this plan to me. Let's do it. Let's rock. Okay, what do you want me to do? All right, well, phase 1, I'm gonna die. Phase 2, you become Madara, but don't be like going around and spreading stuff about my name. You know, I'm still Madara Uchiha, you're just my placeholder. Yeah, I got it, bro. Okay. So anyway, then phase 3 of the plan, you're going to take this Rinnegan out of my skull and you're going to plant it into some guy that could use it. Not really sure who, just find somebody that looks like they would be good with a Rinnegan. All right. Phase 4. Phase 4, you're gonna raise that kid and you're gonna make sure he gets to the point when he's grown up that he can perform the Rinne revival jutsu to bring me back to life properly. You can create a criminal organization or along the way or whatever you want to do. Just make sure that whoever you give the Rinnegan to is gonna perform the Rinne revival jutsu. I cannot understate how important it is that you pick someone that will actually perform the Rinne revival jutsu. And so Obito's like, sure. And then if we do all that, then I can be revived and we'll do the infinite Tsukuyomi and everything will be copacetic. And Obito's like, okay, sure, I'll do it. I could question at this point, you know, Obito just kind of goes with it, right? He just kind of goes with it. But also keep in mind, the curse of the Uchiha. At this moment, he was experiencing such an insane degree of emotion, of hatred and despair for the rest of the world, and the loss of Rin, and also the fact he was a teenager at the time. Let's not overlook that, you know, the fact that he was, you know, in an emotional time of his life to begin with. And he's like, I've lost the only person I've ever loved. What do I have to do? You have to do whatever I say. And that'll fix it? Yep, that'll fix it. Okay, sure. Okay, fine, you're the ancient Uchiha from days long past that has the damn Rinnegan. I'll listen to you, whatever. And so I also think at a certain point, Obito kind of just, he was in too deep. He got to a point where he's already murdered a bunch of people, and his plan was already, you know, or Madara's plan was already well a few years into it. Remember that Obito fought against Minato, you know, right when Naruto was born. When Obito was around 16, 17 years old, he went into the village, and the whole thing with the Nine Tails occurred, the attack and all that stuff, and, you know, he had a fight with his sensei. I imagine at a certain point he just felt like, okay, maybe if he did question it, or if he did step back and think about, like, is what I'm doing really for the best? Is what I'm doing really for the ultimate end goal and everything like that? But he was too far gone. He was just like, no, it has to be because I've already set myself on this goal. I've already, you know, taken the Rinnegan, planted it into Nagato. I've already summoned the damn nine-tailed fox to level my hometown. I've already fought against Minato. I've already tried to kill his son. Rin's already dead. You know, she's not getting any deader. So it's like, yeah, sure, we're gonna go with this. So maybe he questioned it a few times in the early years, but at a certain point, he just started coasting. He just started coasting of like, this is me, this is what I'm doing. I am not Obito Uchiha anymore. He actively tried to tear away that former image of himself and really put on the mask of Madara. Not just the physical mask, but also the figurative mask of, I am Madara, I carry out Madara's will, and his will is for the greater good of the entire planet. Once we can achieve the Moon's Eye plan, everything will be fine. Everything will be set. However, he's still human, and he still has emotion. He still has all of the feelings he always had. He's just trying to stifle them. And Naruto calls him out on this a lot later. I think at this point, and this is another perspective, I think at this point, Obito doesn't want to admit it, but it's like the reason he's doing this might not necessarily be for the world's betterment, even if he does think that the Eye of the Moon plan would improve the world. I think at the end of the day, he's still doing this because he loved Rin. He loved Rin, and so he's just like, I want to have her back. I want to go into this dream world where I could be together with her. Okay, that was the kernel, that was the core of what he wanted to do. Even if he, you know, said otherwise, or he pushed it away, or tried to forget about it, like, I feel nothing anymore, Kakashi. Remember the time when Kakashi took out the lightning blade and, like, pierced Obito when they were fighting in the Kamui dimension, and there's just a hole there, because that's where, like, the Hashirama cells were, so there's just a hole right here in his chest. He's like, look at it, Kakashi. I am truly hollow. I truly fear or feel nothing, you know, and then Kakashi's like, whoa, that's so edgy, and it is, but also, I think it's just, it's bullshit. It's kind of like, no, you want to see Rin again. That's the whole reason you're doing this. You just don't want to admit it to yourself, but that kind of is the reason you're doing this. And then this, of course, okay, so Madara shows up. He's in Edo Tensei at this point. They get the Ten Tails together. They start fighting against Kakashi and Guy. The Ten Tails goes through multiple transformations. The rest of the allied shinobi forces show up. It eventually results in Obito achieving the godhood of this, you know, the second sage. He achieves the Ten Tails. He becomes the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. He states himself that I am no longer human. I am now God. I am something greater. And while he's becoming the Jinchuriki, there's a really cool scene, the way that Kishimoto depicts it, where Obito is literally being split apart by the sheer power of the Ten Tails, and so it's represented by his body literally ripping apart, and then the picture of Minato, Rin, Obito, and Kakashi also being ripped up, and then the thing that manages to hold himself together, the thing that really manages for him to become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, you know, at the end of the day, is him holding on to those emotions. Him holding on to who he really is. He is Obito Uchiha, and he is friends with Kakashi, and he loves Rin, and Minato is his sensei, and it's through those emotions that he clings onto. It pastes the picture back together, and then boom! He's able to maintain the form of the Ten Tails. If he truly was, as he said, you know, nobody. I was no one. I don't want to be anybody. I just want to be the instrument of Madara's will. If he truly was that and nothing more, he probably wouldn't have been able to maintain the Ten Tails Jinchuriki state at all in the beginning, right? So it results in the scene where Obito, I mean, we got some cool scenes with him and everything in the Jinchuriki form, but that culminates in the tug of war that they all have, where they're trying to pull out the essences of the tailed beast from Obito. And Naruto hooks up all of the chakra wires and ropes and everything, and he's like, literally gives them to the entirety of the allied shinobi forces, you know, thousands of shinobi from all across the different nations, and Naruto's like, okay, everybody, pull! And so Obito's all by himself as the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, and then an entire nation of ninja and shinobi are pulling on the chakra threads, and then boom! We go into the inner realm, the inner world, where we see Naruto with all of his friends, all of the shinobi behind him, you know, Sakura, Kakashi, Gaara, everybody from all the different villages around Naruto as a massive crowd. And then you see Obito there on the opposite side, and Obito just kind of looks behind him, and there's nobody, there's no one. And he looks over at the other side, and I really like this. I really liked it whenever Kishimoto drew Obito as if he would have stayed in the village. Like if Obito, let's say, recovered from the damage after the boulder and he did return to the village, how he would have turned out. And you see him as a regular Jonin of the village. You see him if he would have become the Hokage of the village. And I really like that. And once again, that's not just physical representation. That really is what Obito wanted. At the end of the day, he kept saying to himself, he kept lying to himself of that he was nobody. But he really did want that, even after all the years that passed and all the things that he did, all the murders he committed. And he committed quite a few. Let's not forget about that. He killed a lot of people. Including Conan, the bastard Obito. You killed Conan. Anyway, he still wanted to be Hokage. Those dreams of Obito Uchiha that he had as a kid are still there inside of him, right? And so that he mentions it to Naruto. He's like, Naruto, I saw so much of myself in you. That was intentional because that's what Kishimoto did. He's like, I felt so much of myself in you, I wanted to test you. And I wanted to see, you know, what you would do at the end of the day here. And it's a thing where it's like, if the tables were flipped and Naruto would have ended up the same way as Obito did. It's possible if the tables were flipped, it might have happened that way. You know, and Naruto just kind of tells him, you know, you are Obito Uchiha. You're not Madara, you're not nobody, you are Obito Uchiha. Don't lie to me. And so they have this big discussion inside of this ethereal world. And even at the end of that, Obito kind of rejects it a bit. He tries to, like, strangle Naruto. Like, I will not go over to your side! The talk no jutsu won't work on me! Yes, it will! Okay, well, you got an interesting point, Naruto. Damn it! And so all of the allied shinobi managed to yank out the essences of the Biju out of Obito. And then Kakashi goes up to him afterwards, and Kakashi has to talk to him. Minato's there as well. Minato's an Edo Tensei at this point. And Minato's like, yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I died. I feel like if I was still alive, I could have helped you guys out. I could have helped you, Obito. I could have helped you, Kakashi. It's really my fault for dying as young as I did. I apologize for that. Kakashi is like, you know, I see so much of Naruto in you. You know, I see so much of Obito in Naruto as well. And it's like, I'm gonna be the one, I'm trying to rectify the situation. I'll be the one that always, you know, guides Naruto, so he never ends up on the path that you did. Because Obito even mentions that, like, how can you be sure, Kakashi? What if all the people around Naruto ended up dying? You know, who's to say he wouldn't end up the same as me? And Kakashi's like, he won't, because I'm here. That one's kind of like, okay, all right, let's play that. Let's test that. Let's say in an alternate reality, Sasuke and Sakura straight up die right in front of Naruto's eyes. How do you think that would go? See, that's the thing. It's like Naruto, when he does the talk no jutsu stuff, it's a meme for a reason. It's like, you know, he manages to flip the, you know, the enemy's perspective on its head, and they actually question about, like, well, what do I really want? Or how did I lose track of what I truly sought all these years? Like, he basically, what the talk no jutsu is he basically makes his enemy have an existential crisis right in front of him, right? And, you know, the thing is, though, like, Naruto this whole time, everything works out great for him, because Naruto, yes, he lost his parents, You know, and there's a lot of other ninja throughout the village that have died. The third Hokage died. Asuma eventually dies. Of course, there's people that die. Jiraiya died, of course. I mean, that was a big loss as well. But I'm saying, like, what if it happened, like, right in front of him? You know, would he have a different perspective if he actually witnessed Jiraiya die right in front of him? Or if he witnessed Sakura and Sasuke die right in front of him? Especially since for pretty much the entirety of Part 2, that's Naruto's goal. Naruto's sole goal at the beginning of Part 2 is like, Sasuke! And I'm going to bring you back to the village. I'm going to make you see the light and all that kind of stuff. What if Sasuke straight up died right in front of him and Naruto failed? Just right there. I don't know. I have a feeling like Naruto wouldn't immediately just be like, you know, like he would be able to recover from that. Maybe he would have turned similar to what Obito did. Maybe. It's possible. And then it would have Kakashi by himself been able to turn him off that path. What if Kakashi died as well? You know, that's the thing. Like, Obito literally lost his love, Rin, and then he lost his sensei. He got to see Kakashi kill Rin along the way. Kakashi lived, but still, that's a lot of loss there. And so I don't think Naruto, yes, even though he lost Jiraiya, yes, he lost his parents. He didn't even know about his parents, though, until later. He never knew them growing up. I feel like, yeah, if Sakura and Sasuke died right in front of Naruto, that would yield a little bit of a different reaction from him. He might have turned out different. He might have not. He might have been able to fight through it, and that might have been an example, and he was like a shining beacon at the end of the day regardless. But I guess that's neither here nor there. We never really saw it. But at any rate, Obito questions his own morality. He does have kind of existential crisis at that point. And, you know, there's also the scene with the Black Zetsu taking over half of him, forcing him to prepare the Rinne revival to truly bring back Madara. And this kind of, you know, brings us into the last part of this arc, where Madara's the villain, then Black Zetsu's the villain, and then boom, Kaguya's the villain. And when Kaguya is the villain, then Obito, you know, I will help you guys now. I will fight alongside of you. Kakashi, we're a two-man cell back again, you know. And so we got the scene with him fighting against Kaguya and helping out Sakura as well and everything, trying to bring Naruto back to life when he dies, you know, with the whole sage thing and everything. So he essentially, you know, he kind of, I think he realizes, like, I'm going to die by the end of this battle. I'm not going to make it out of this. And probably realizing for everything that I've done up until this point, I probably don't even deserve to make it out of this alive. But I'm going to do what I can, I guess. You know, for while I'm here, I'm going to do what I can to help out Kakashi and Naruto and maybe sort of live up to maybe a fraction of that dream that I had when I was a kid. All right, and so Obito does that, and he eventually takes an ash bone to the gut and then just kind of disintegrates right then and there. However, that's not the end, though. That leads into actually a pretty nifty moment, where we have Obito and Rin finally reuniting in the afterlife, in the pure realm. They meet, and then Rin kind of tells Obito, like, well, you can stay here, but there's one more thing you have to do. And so Obito's soul just kind of returns from the afterlife. It's a little confusing, I gotta be honest with you. He dies. He straight up disintegrates into ash because of Kaguya's attack. He goes into the afterlife, and he's just like, wait, I still have to help out Kakashi. I use soul power! And then the soul goes back to the living world, to the impure realm, and then gives Kakashi both Sharingans, and then he's able to activate the true Susanoo. Like, this is your birthday present, you know, or, you know, this is your Jonin present I should have given you all those years ago. Boom! You got it, Kakashi. You got both Sharingans. You are truly Kakashi of the Sharingan. They're both gonna wear off after this battle, but man, you're gonna look cool in the meantime, right? And so he does that. He activates his Susanoo. Kakashi helps, you know, Naruto and Sasuke and Sakura defeat Kaguya, and then eventually the Sharingan dissipates, and Obito is finally able to go into the afterlife, into the pure realm, and finally reunite with Rin, and that's the end of his character. All right, so is Obito redeemed through all of that? You kind of have to come to the conclusion on that on your own. At any rate, by the end of it, I think he basically just, you know, it was like, as the infinite Tsukuyomi was supposed to create a dream world for everything, Obito was sort of living in his own dream world. He was kind of living in a nightmare for like over a decade, from the moment that he saw Rin killed all the way up to when Naruto had that talk to him in his inner realm. he was kind of in this mire, in this haze, where he's like, you know, I have to do what I have to do, no matter how much blood has to be stained. I have to do this. And then Naruto showed him, no, you don't. It's okay. Even after everything you did, you still have a chance to stop this. You could stop it right now. This whole God thing and Biju and everything, like, you could stop it right now. You don't have to do it, and you can come over here to our side. And he decides to do that. And so for the last probably only few hours of his life, because I think that's only the time span of how that last part happened, from when Obito absorbed the Ten Tails, to Madara having it, to Black Zetsu taking over, to Kaguya's battle, that whole dimensional thing, time span of probably only a few hours. I would imagine that all that stuff takes place. It all happens in one night. And at the end of all of that, you know, Obito dies and he's reunited with Rin, so I guess he's content. If nothing else, he's like, all right, this is what I wanted from the beginning, and I got that, so okay. And then eventually it's like, there is an afterlife in Naruto, so eventually when Kakashi dies, he'll reunite, and Minato's there as well, and everybody will be happy, I guess. Happy ending, I suppose. I guess what Kishimoto went with there. Yeah. So at the end of this, I mean, I titled this video, as I'm always with the Akatsuki series, you know, I was trying to think of a way to describe Obito. I was going to call it just Obito was Tobi, but eh. So I went with Obito was tragedy. Because certainly, yes, there is a lot of tragedy in Obito's backstory. Can't get over that. There certainly is there. But whether or not, you know, how it all concluded and whether or not you were satisfied with that, and you think the happy ending for his character was justified, that's on you. You got to make that decision on your own. I got to be honest with you, even now, even after I went back and looked a lot more into his character, I of course don't have as much of a dislike for him as I originally did the first time reading it through. But I'm also like, yeah, but there were a few times he could have stopped that plan. You know, he was doing that for over 10 years. He could have had a realization moment before then. Like, it was like almost like there's no way anyone could change their mind on things unless Naruto has a heart-to-heart with them. Like, that's the only way someone could possibly fight through their own personal demons. And maybe the message Kishi's trying to teach there is like, you know, it all comes down to having people that support you. And that's perfectly exemplified in the inner realm, where Obito has nobody behind him and Naruto has all of his friends and all of the shinobi helping him out. So I guess it all boils down to just the message of friends are power, friends help you, and they do, they certainly do. You know, but hey, Nagato had Conan. You know, it wasn't like Nagato was completely alone there. Jiraiya also tried to help him out as much as he could, you know. And then Obito, I mean, I guess it really wouldn't have worked too much, but I guess Obito could have went back to the village at any point, and before he did the whole Nine Tails plan, like, he could have went back to the village and talked to Minato while he was still alive. He could have went back and seen Kakashi again, and he could have talked to them, and maybe he could have figured something out. But once again, at that point, I think he was so awash in that hatred of the Uchiha clan that it was just beyond his capabilities of doing that. Like, it's just like, I feel so much hatred and despair, no one could possibly do anything about that. I need to change the entire world. I need to do that, like, kind of burn the world or change the world kind of mentality that a lot of Uchiha experience, right? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I can't really remember all the Akatsuki members. I think we talked about all of them up until this point, you know, except for, I think, Orochimaru and Itachi, right? Those are the only two that are left. I don't think there's anybody else. So next time, I guess we'll be talking about the Snake Man himself, Orochimaru, and then we'll close out the series at last with Itachi Uchiha.